Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are new, welcome. I'm very glad that you're here on my journey. I'm talking about a lot of faith-related topics, and I know in my last one I talked about quantum computing and AI and a little bit of consciousness. Um, Talk, and it was very it was a little bit much. The binary code and the computer terminology and all of that is not something I'm going to be doing much more of. But so I'm going to take a lighter route today, and I'm going to talk about puppies, rainbows, and just lollipops. Okay, maybe not the other two, but I am going to talk about rainbows today because everyone loves a beautiful rainbow. I mean, am I right? I mean, we all love to look at this God's beauty in creation, and the rainbow is an excellent example of that. I want to start off with showing you something here. I'm a mom and I've got a couple of kids, and I just want to share these with you. These are really cool to get for kids. This was a Christmas present for my kids, but just a little stocking stuffer thing. It's just a rainbow prism, and it's really interesting for kids to use. You know, they can show it up to the sun, and it creates rainbows. If you can see that back behind me. But anyway, that's just a good way to segue into what I'm about to talk about with rainbows. So you know, I think we've all seen just a beautiful rainbow, and there's just so many fascinating facts regarding rainbows that I don't think the average person is aware of. I know for me, it was about 10 years ago. I was going through a really tough time where I was just doubting God's love for me. It was, you know, just He really loved me as much as what I read about in the Bible. It was like He was showing me so much of who He was, His character. And I think sometimes we doubt. It's like, do you really love me as much as you say in your word? Is it something that I can absolutely stand on, and no matter what's going on, I can trust on that? And I was just looking for, you know, sometimes we look for signs. We look for, you know, those little reminders that God's with us. And I was going through that kind of that questioning, that dark period, and the way we have a bathroom in our house where the mirror it was cut a certain way, and it was in, I think this was in December, about 10 years ago. The way the sun would shine through the window and would reflect off of that, you know, that mirror, it created, like, I mean, it was probably 15 little prism rainbows all over the bedroom. And if this happened, you know, a little bit in the bathroom, it's like you saw them all over the place. And I just remember thinking it was just I had just kind of this childlike wonder when I saw that. It was just a reminder that, okay, God keeps His promises and that He really is there. And even in those small moments where we just we tend to overlook that. Um, I remember my mom talking about my grandmother and how when her husband, my grandfather, passed away a while back, that you know, she was sorrowful, you know, like any wife would be when her husband passes away. But they were driving back to her house, and she lives, there's a driveway, a steep driveway that leads down into, you know, where she lives. And my mom said that when they approached the top of the hill to go back home, she saw this beautiful, I mean, beautiful rainbow above in the sky, and it just gave her comfort that, okay, I can go on. Everything's going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And the funny part about it all is that my mom doesn't really remember seeing any rainbow, really. And so that just shows that I think God uses those things sometimes to just speak personally to someone, that yes, I'm here and I'm not leaving. You don't ever have to doubt that I'm there for you. Nearly every culture and belief system sees rainbows. A lot of cultures see rainbows as bridges to the spiritual realm. Um, And then some cultures even see rainbows as omens. But the Bible has always portrayed a rainbow as a sign of God's covenant with his people. His promise not to flood the earth again, because we all know the story of Noah in Genesis. And it's always been a symbol of his grace. So rainbows actually represent Jesus himself. I'm going to give you some really interesting facts on rainbows. You may not know some of these facts, but hey, you're always learning something new, right? You're never too old to learn something new. The higher the observer is when they're seeing a rainbow, the more likely they are to observe a full circle. So, we see just an arc, um, if we're on lowland. If we're on a mountain, you have the potential to see the entire rainbow. And a rainbow is an entire circle. It's not just the arc that we're so used to seeing. So that was really interesting. There are less rainbows in the winter. A rainbow has no end because it's a circle. It goes all the way around. So that whole pot of gold thing, I mean, who knows? Maybe it's true after all. Um, Earth is the only planet with rainbows, and this is fascinating because I'm kind of like, well, I'm not sure how they know that for sure, but I read it here. Each water droplet has its own rainbow, and it projects this out into the world. So it's kind of like, we have this just small world. I mean, you notice this a lot if you're a gardener. You go outside and you see these things on I don't want to say microscopic level, but a tiny level, and you just see how complex, just even his simplest, what we see as simple, how complex his simple creation is. Hawaii has the most rainbows. That's even more reason to go to Hawaii. I've always wanted to go there. And I read that this was related to just because Hawaii is completely surrounded by water. So if you have a lot of water, that's where the potential for a rainbow comes from. And then there's a thing I've never heard of this, but there's actually a thing called lunar moonbows, and these you actually see at night, and it's formed by water and the light from the moon. So that was interesting. So the way rainbows work, each color is arranged in a certain way because there are different frequency ranges. So I don't know how familiar you are with the color range, but we as human beings, we can only see a narrow range of light, and that is basically what the rainbow is. So you've got violet light. Can't talk. You have that on one end, which is the higher frequency. And if you think about it, violet is not a color that we see in nature very much. It's seen as very much more mysterious. It's just not what we see in nature. Something that I find really fascinating, though, is the color green is pretty much in the middle of the spectrum. And if you think about it, that's what most of our Earth is. I mean, we see plants, trees, it makes sense why that would be in the middle. So ultraviolet is 750 terahertz. Like I said, it's the rarest color in nature. And then you have infrared, which is on the other end. Infrared is the lowest frequency that the human that we can perceive. And this is 430 terahertz. So it just shows that we don't really know. There's just a whole lot that is just undetectable to the human eye. I don't want to get off the topic here, but people have, I don't. Like I said, I'm going down a rabbit trail here, but you hear people with near-death experiences and things like that, and regardless of what you think of near death, what it is exactly, people have always described in these experiences that they see colors that they've never seen before. It's like they're just colors that they just don't exist on Earth. You can't really describe exactly what the color is accurately because it's something that's never been seen by the human eye. So that's interesting. Getting back to rainbows, though, a photon, and I'm going to just touch on just a little bit of, okay, a photon is the elementary particle of light. It's a quantum of electromagnetic energy that travels at the speed of light and has no mass or electric charge. And it exhibits both wave-like and particle-like properties. So I'm not going to get into the science of it because I am not a sciencey type person, but I find just a personal anecdote. I find photons absolutely fascinating, and I think that is um, God. It's a lot more complex than what we think. Just how light and frequency interact. There's just so much that we're not aware of on our um, just on this 3D level. We can't, we can't perceive it, and I don't think God meant for us to perceive it on this earth. I think that there really are things that await us in the spiritual realm, being with Him forever. I just think there's a lot awaiting us as far as what we're able to perceive. That everything is just very limited here on earth. But I think that we get those glimmers sometimes, and I think light is just one of those magical things that He uses to, for me, example, it brings about creativity, and in a weird way. I don't know. It kind of inspires me in a way to create something, or it might put certain ideas into my head that I didn't have before. It's just really profound. And then you go back to Genesis, where there was darkness. That was the first thing that came about. I mean, the very first thing. It's just so fundamental to our existence. And then you go back, and then you go to the book of John, where Jesus is described as the light of the world. And it's just very profound. So I'm going to, because I just mentioned the Bible, I'm going to just mention some verses. I'm talking about the rainbow. The first one is, "This is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you." This verse is from Genesis in regards to Noah and the story of the ark and the flood. "This is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. It shall be, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. The water shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh." So that was His promise to never flood the earth again, that we see in Genesis. Also, "For by Him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through Him and for Him." And that's Colossians 1:16. So everything was created through Jesus, like He really is. I mean, you think about if light were personified, children grow up. When children are young, they understand the concept of light. They know it's good. They know there's no evil. There's a purity to it. And so if you were to personify that, Jesus is the light. He is the light of the world. "By faith, we understand that the universe was created by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things that are visible." This is Hebrews 11:3. So, like I said, there's a spiritual foundation to all of this, and there's a spiritual reality that's more real than here where we are. Okay, the Hebrew language, in Hebrew, it's the translation. It translates to war bow, and so that's really interesting that God, the rainbow was a sign of peace, and so God was turning that weapon of judgment toward Himself, and that's what we see through the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. It's God's, it's judgment on man and his sin and evil, and it was taken upon by Jesus on the cross. So God's color of the throne in heaven is an emerald rainbow, and I've thought about why green, why emerald, and I I don't, the only thing I can really think of is it just green represents life, and it represents, it's necessary for photosynthesis. The last thing that I want to do, actually one of the last things, I want to read to you something that Jonathan Edwards talked about as far as the significance of the rainbow around the throne of God in glory. He says, the rainbow we know was appointed of God as a token of his gracious covenant with mankind. God is encompassed with the rainbow, which signifies that as he sits and reigns and manifests himself in his church, he appears as encompassed with mercy, as of old the throne of God in the Holy of Holies, where God manifested himself in the church of Israel, was called the mercy seat. So here, there's a rainbow, the sign of God's gracious covenant, round about the throne that he sits on. This rainbow was in sight like unto an emerald, which is a precious stone of an exceeding lovely color green, so green that this color appears in nothing else so lively and lovely. This color is a most fit emblem of divine grace. It is a very lively color, not so dull as blue or purple, and yet most easy to the sight, more easy than the more fiery colors of yellow and red. It is the color of all the grass, herbs, and trees, and growth of the earth, and therefore fitly denotes life, flourishing, property, and happiness, which are often in Scripture compared to the green and flourishing growth of the earth. As the benign influence of the sun on the face of the earth is shown by this color above all others, so is the grace and benign influence and communication of God fitly represented by this color. This color is the color of joy and gladness. The fields are said to shout for joy and also to sing by their appearing in a cheerful green. As the color red is made use of to signify God's revenging justice, as in Zechariah 1:8 and elsewhere, so is green the emblem of a divine grace. This doesn't imply that the rainbow had no other color, but that the proportion of green was greater than ordinary. So he's saying that the green represents joy and abundance, and that is exactly what we have through grace, and that grace is personified by Jesus Christ. So that makes perfect sense. I don't think we need to overanalyze that one. But just an interesting fact here. It's we see rainbows after a really difficult time in life. It's just looking at the weather itself. A rainbow has to appear after dark clouds, after a storm, after that really dark period, um, and it appears in the same clouds that brought that judgment. And so it symbolizes God's grace. It appears in those darkest sorrows and trials. So it's that anchor, it's that hope that transcends whatever it is that we're going through at that time. And it's during those dark, hard times of our life where we see the sweetness of God's grace. It's like we enter into that fellowship. We actually, for a change, we understand, or we can't fathom it on this side, what he really went through, and how much he adores us and he loves us. I don't think we can grasp that. So it's that rainbow is that sweetness that kind of reaches to us in that dark period, and Jesus is that. He's that sweetness, that hope that's beyond what we can see with our physical eyes, the storms. So I want to close off with this song that really touched me years ago. It's a song that I can't listen to this song without being in tears by the end of it, because it is so it's hauntingly beautiful. It's just haunting. It really is. It's by George Matheson. He was a Christian minister. I'm not sure exactly when he lived, but he was a Christian minister, and he I'm not sure if he was dating or in a relationship with this lady, or if I'm not sure if they were married at any point, but she left him, and she said she didn't love him anymore, and he he was going through the pain of the breakup, but on top of that, he was losing his eyesight. So he he eventually lost his eyesight altogether. So the man was going through a lot of sorrow and pain when he wrote this song. But it's called "Oh Love That Love That Will Not Let Me Go," and I'm just going to read just one small part of it to you, because it illustrates what I've talked about today. O joy that seekest me through pain, I cannot close my heart to thee. I trace the rainbow through the rain, and feel the promise is not vain, that morn shall tearless be. So I highly suggest listening to that song. It's just haunting, because it's like you feel the presence of Jesus in that song. He's in it. He's in it. He's all over it. So it's really it's touching. And if you're going through a really tough time, you might actually break out sobbing, because it's just hauntingly beautiful. I just want to end on two scripture verses, since we talked about joy in that song that I just read to you. John 15:11, Jesus says that my joy may be in you and your joy may be full. So he's the reason why we have joy. We don't have joy because of circumstances in our life going well. I mean, we want our circumstances to be going well, but that's not what gives us that joy that can never be taken away. He is the source of that. He's the only way to receive that full joy. And the last verse is, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. And that's Hebrews 12:2. So it's like, we as humans, we have that void, each one of us, where we're looking for that. We're looking for unconditional love, but we're also looking for joy, just the fullness of joy. Joy just unbridled. And Jesus, it may be hard for some people to believe, but the joy that was in it for him was having us. It was having us as sons and daughters. It was us entering into this inheritance, this special relationship that was between Jesus and the Father originally. And he extended it through Jesus's death, burial, and resurrection. He extended it to all of mankind. So all you have to do is believe. You believe on the gospel and you are saved. And you have that. He has that joy because he has ransomed you. You are part of his family. You are in union with him. And so it's joy meets joy. And I just want all of you to, let us remember that in those trials. Let us remember that, he's the rainbow that's waiting on that other side. And I don't want to even say he's waiting on the other side. He's extending his hand and he's pulling us gently. He's pulling us through that storm, and he's the hope that transcends. So that is all I have for you. I hope you were able to get something from it. I hope it brightened your day a little bit, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Stay blessed.